when football had no rules. Boring history. Back in the 12th and 13th centuries, in the towns of England, something called football began to appear. It was not organized, and it did not have any official rules. People simply gathered in the streets and started kicking a ball, so more accurately, a pig's bladder, from one end of the town to the other. There were no teams, no uniforms, and no fixed number of players. Anyone could join in. The only objective was to move the ball toward the other side of the village. How they did it did not really matter. People kicked, pushed, tripped, and sometimes even punched one another. The games were rough and unstructured. These early versions of the game were later known as mob football. Sometimes a single match continued for hours, even an entire day. Shops were damaged, fences were broken, and many people were injured. The streets turned into a place of confusion and noise. Different towns had their own rules. In some places, players were allowed to use their hands. In others, only the feet were permitted. Some towns allowed wrestling, while others did not. There was also no fixed size for the playing field. Sometimes the pitch was the whole village. From one church to another, players chased the ball through mud, rivers, and narrow lanes. It was a game with no limits and no order. As the years passed, the violence of the game became a concern. During the 14th century, King Edward II of England decided to ban football. The reason was simple. Young men and soldiers were spending too much time playing and not enough time training for war. Other kings, such as Edward III and Henry IV, also issued bans. However, these bans were rarely successful. The people continued to play, ignoring royal orders. By the 1800s, football began to appear in schools and colleges across Britain. Schools such as Eton, Harrow, and Rugby each developed their own versions of the game. Some schools allowed players to carry the ball with their hands. This later became rugby. Others preferred using only their feet. This version slowly turned into what we now call soccer. But there was still one problem. Every school had different rules. When teams from different schools played each other, confusion returned. Arguments about handballs, offsides, and goals were common. It was clear that the game needed a universal set of rules. In October 1863, a meeting was held at the Freemasons' Tavern in London. Representatives from several football clubs gathered to form the Football Association, the FA. Their goal was to create one official rulebook for everyone. After discussion, they made a few key decisions. Using hands was no longer allowed. Tripping or kicking opponents was banned. And fighting on the field was forbidden. That day marked the birth of modern football. From disorder and confusion, a proper set of rules finally emerged. The game started to look more like the football we know today. In the early years, referees did not even stand on the field. They watched from the sidelines and intervened only when players disagreed. Goal nets were not introduced until 1891. Before that, players often argued about whether the ball had crossed the line. The first footballs were handmade and often uneven. They changed shape after every strong kick. Playing with such a ball was difficult and unpredictable. From the muddy streets of medieval England to the carefully marked stadiums of today, football has changed dramatically. What began as an uncontrolled mob game slowly transformed into the most popular sport in the world. Yet in every match played today, the same energy and passion can still be felt. The shouts, the movement, the emotion, all of it is connected to that ancient, chaotic version of the game. So the next time you complain about a referee or about VAR, remember, there was once a time when football had no rules at all. From wild mobs to modern stadiums, this is the long and rather strange story of how football learned to follow the rules.